Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. Moving now to the South Caucasus. Georgia's aspirations for closer ties with the West are facing significant setbacks, not only with the European Union, but also with NATO. And this amid recent allegations of election fraud against the government in Tbilisi. Several former diplomats have told TVP World that Georgia's NATO membership prospects are now effectively stalled, with NATO potentially suspending its partnership program with Georgia in the near future. Now, to discuss these developments further, I welcome Shota Gvineria, Economic Policy Research Center of Georgia, to the program. Good morning, Shota. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning. Now,
Hello,
Shota,
thank you very much for the invitation.
Shota, last time we spoke, there developments. The first development is that these protests are still continuing now in their 12th consecutive day, 12th consecutive night. But I want to start here first by asking you about these sanctions. So now the European Union's ambassador to Georgia has described the repression of protests there as unacceptable. He said the EU is working on the sanctions against Tbilisi to potentially begin to be presented on December 16. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so what I can tell you very honestly about this is that the Georgian people who are protesting in the streets for, as you said, 12th consecutive day, really feel that these sanctions are way overdue right now, because we are listening to the concerned statements from our friends and partners. We see sober assessment of the situation. We hear concerns about the rigged elections. We hear concerns about the violence in the streets of Tbilisi, which is getting completely out of hand. And I hope we will have a chance to cover this during this interview. And then yet, when it comes to the specific actions about how to address this, because this is the thing that we expect our friends to react to. And we still hear a lot of right assessments, as I said, but the steps are taking way too long. So we have been encouraging our American friends and partners and our European friends and partners to finally sanction the regime, and especially Bidzina Ivanishvili, who is the puppet master there and pulls all the strings, even before the elections, because we had all the indications and all the statements from the officials that these elections couldn't have been conducted in any different way than we saw it. So there were all the indications for the month now. There is an evidence of the rigged elections. There is an evidence of the unprecedented violence in the streets, but yet we are still waiting for our friends to react to those violations in a clear way.
Shota, you're saying about friends and their response to what's happening. But now tell me, please, given NATO's long-standing partnership with Georgia, how do you assess NATO's current response to the crisis that's unfolding in the country?
Very honestly, I don't think that the NATO is the main stakeholder there, because NATO is a political military organization, and Georgian authorities, they made it very clear that they're not interested in pushing forward Georgia's NATO membership process at this point in time, which is regrettable, because the Constitution of Georgia clearly says that NATO membership is the choice of the Georgian people and is the top foreign and security policy priority for Georgia. But the government and the political leadership have been very clear, in blaming NATO for the war in Ukraine instead of Russia, and all this pro-Russian propaganda that we hear from Kremlin and from Maria Zakharova and Peskov and others have been very popular also among Georgian political leaders. So there is no surprise that NATO does not have an appetite at this point to push forward relationships with Georgia. And the only stakeholder to blame for that is the Georgian government. But the EU is here the key, I would say. And EU has all the political and economic tools to inflict costs for the violation of democratic processes and principles in Georgia, and for gross violation of human rights in Georgia. And that's what we expect.
Okay, so my question now, I mean, this is what you expect. So what do you think the EU can do?
EU should, without any further delay, announce sanctions, personal sanctions on the political leadership and civil servants who are recorded to be violating those democratic and human rights principles for years now, and most vividly and noticeably for the last 12 days. You know, we have been watching the authorities and the Ministry of Interior and the special services hunting down literally the protesters in the streets far beyond the place where the protests take place. They have been arrested and beaten after the arrest in their homes and in the entrances of their private properties. And now what we see yesterday as the new development is that the government actually realized that this violence against the protesters is counterproductive, and more violence we see in the streets from the part of the authorities, more people come out to protest, and the protest rally is actually growing as a result of that violations of the human rights. So yesterday they introduced the new tactics. So they're not actually harassing people at the site of the protest itself, but they started targeting them at their apartments, at their offices, and they're literally kidnapping these people, and they're taking them to the detention facilities without notifying anybody about that. And then the family and friends of these people are trying to find these people, and so the authorities now have leveled up their aggression tactics against the protesters by kidnapping them and just people disappear.
Shota, would you say that these are Russian? Would you say that these are Russian influence tactics?
Oh,
is
well,
this something that you
this
think
is
that
the
Georgia has
copy
experienced
paste
in the past?
Yes, so this is the exact copy-paste from the Russian OMON playbook. And what we see here makes me, and not only me, think that basically the Georgian Dream authorities are not even in control of the processes anymore. And you know very well that the sphere of influence that Russia wants to build is defined by that. So when the countries and the governments of the sovereign countries lose the ability to actually put their national interests and the political interests of the regime first, and it doesn't matter anymore what Georgia's national interest is or what Ivanishvili even wants. It does matter what Russia wants to get in this situation. And I really do feel that Russians are in control right now, because we see the Russian objectives being fulfilled through Russian tactics and Russian methods right now.
But also with what just happened in Syria over the past few days and the crisis unfolding, do you think that may have an impact of how the Russian influence will play out? But just very briefly, Shota, because we're out of time, yeah?
Yeah, well, basically, I think that it is becoming clear that Russia is very well stretched across the board, and they do not have resources to deal with so many crises anymore. They're fully consumed in Ukraine, and they physically do not have any more resources to be in control in other places like Syria and hopefully in Georgia too. But for that, as I said, we will need to hear very clearly what the response of our friends and partners will be. And people are increasingly frustrated because, 12 days is enough time now to react and to do something to help and support democracy in Georgia from Brussels and from Washington and other places.
Thank you so much, Shota Gvineria, Economic Policy Research Center of Georgia, for being with us here this morning and unpacking this crisis unfolding in Georgia. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Don't go away. Up next, news with Claudia Czerwinska.